So today's topic, we're going to talk about what's known as mental fortitude, and it's this. Sometimes you get this kind of like this, sort of like mental toughness. I think for many of us, this is a challenge. This is a hard thing for us to be able to manage day in and day out. How do we stay not just physically tough, but this idea of how do we stay mentally tough? And it's not just mentally, it's this idea of like just mentally and emotionally and spiritually and relationally. Again, this idea of fortitude. There's like this resilience about this quality of mental fortitude. So it's this quiet kind of inner strength that gets us through the hard moments. So before we jump into the content today, I would love for you to just maybe take a moment to think about when's the last time you were up against something difficult, something challenging, something hard, and you were able to dig deep. You were able to find some strength. You were able to find some fortitude, and you were able to work through it. And take a moment to reflect on that. Maybe it was already this morning. Maybe it was over the weekend, last week, last month. Maybe for some of you, it's been a long time. Okay, so I want to give you kind of a working definition for this idea of mental fortitude. So here's this idea: mental fortitude is the ability to stay grounded, emotionally regulated, and value driven, especially when life gets difficult. Did you catch that? Stay grounded, emotionally regulated, and value driven. Here's the important part about this idea of mental fortitude: is it's not about suppressing our emotions or our feelings or our thoughts. And it's also not about trying to avoid them, pretending they're not there, or doing everything we can to remove any obstacle in our way in which we might actually be able to have to experience adversity, challenge, or obstacles. In fact, quick side note to this, I recently did a parenting workshop, and we were talking about different parenting styles. And there's a question I remember from we did a Q&A after the presentation, and we're talking about what many people know, helicopter parents. Right? Helicopter parent is the type of parent that is they're hovering over their kid, right? The helicopter, right? And they're watching every move, and they're like kind of not just hovering, but they're sometimes like smothering them, right? It says as soon as there is any little type of discomfort, the parents swoops in, right? Picks them up, protects them, to ensure that they're okay, right? That's the idea of a helicopter parent. I don't know if you've heard about this, but more recently, there's another term that's come out, which is the idea of a lawnmower parent. A lawnmower parent is not the parent who hovers over top and then is there to swoop in anytime that the child struggles or has hurt. But the lawnmower parent they're actually a far more preventative and like proactive parent, in the sense that they're actually getting out ahead of their child, and they're mowing down. That's why it's called lawnmower parent. They're mowing down every obstacle, every thing that might be in the path or the way that the child might be going in life, right? To make sure that it's nothing but pretty and perfect and put together, right? There's nothing that leads to any hardship, any hurt, or any challenge for a child. Yeah, a lawnmower parent. Let me tell you this as it relates to today's content. For those of us as parents, I'm a parent. I have two adult children. Both of my boys are in school. One's finishing up high school, the other's finishing up college. And so I just share this as a parent who relates. Like, we want to do everything we can to help our child from getting hurt. None of us as parents love to see our kids struggling or hurting or crying, going through hardship. But here's what we can tell you: like the work that we're going to talk about today, it doesn't happen by avoiding hardships. It doesn't happen by suppressing emotions. Right? It doesn't happen by mowing down anything that might be in the path or the way that might be difficult or challenging for what comes ahead in our lives of our kids. In fact, It's oftentimes the opposite. It's the opposite. Because the reality is with mental fortitude is it takes practice. And if we as parents don't allow our kids to practice, and or just we as people, as we talk about today's content, don't look for those opportunities. That's a crazy way to think about it, is opportunities. Like hardship could actually be an opportunity. Well, it can be. It's an opportunity to increase mental fortitude. It's an opportunity. To another term we use here is to strengthen what we know as distress tolerance. Distress tolerance is one's ability to tolerate distress. Well, that doesn't happen without lots of practice. Okay, so whether you're a parent listening to this and you're thinking about, are you a helicopter parent? Are you a lawnmower parent? Are you some other kind of parenting style? Or you're just a person who's thinking about this for your own sake, your own health, your own well being, it's important for us, again, to not pretend that hardship isn't happening, ignore it when it does, shove down and suppress those thoughts or those feelings. But rather, mental fortitude happens when we can face it head on, we can take a deep breath and walk through it. Okay, so you probably, I asked you earlier if you had an example of that. So you probably all actually have some story, right, of when life has been hard and you've been able to walk through it with some sense of discipline, resilience, right, and fortitude. I worked with a client recently, and he lost his job and he broke up with his significant other like in the same week. I remember him coming in to tell me, and I'm like, "Hey, dude, how you doing? Like, how was your week?" We were just doing a check in, and he shared these two things with me. And both of those, I mean, in and of themselves, individually, are like devastating, right? To lose your job, right, and then the uncertainty of all that that brings, or to lose a relationship, to break up with your significant other, right, and all of the unknowns of what's coming in the midst of that, and the hurt and the loss and the grief in both of these, super challenging in and of themselves. But when they're paired together, and he lost both in the same week. Here's what was really interesting about when he came in. Although he was able to come in and he was able to talk about it, he was able to acknowledge the hardship, he was able to give names to some of his experiences, right? He was able to talk about some of his emotions. He was also able, in the midst of that, to be able to do some reframing, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. He was able to do some processing. I remember him sharing with me that he journaled. He also referenced me that faith was really important to him, and he leaned into his faith in this time. And I am certain, because of those things, which we're going to dig into a little bit more today, he was able to navigate this really difficult week that he had just had far better than others, maybe who just don't have those skills, or maybe have not been able to develop or build that strength. So I want to talk just like in a really practical way, like maybe the pillars of mental fortitude. And I just want to identify four of them for you. So the first one is what we call emotional awareness, or emotional attuneness is the technical term. And so it's just that it's the recognizing your emotions, right? When life happens and it's hard, like emotions show up, whether we know it or not, whether we acknowledge it or admit it or not, there are emotions there. So this emotional awareness is just our ability to be able to say, hey, there's emotions there. And specifically, not just to acknowledge those emotions, but to acknowledge them without judgment. A judgment statement, like after something difficult has happened, might be able to self-criticizing statement, like I shouldn't feel that way, or uh, this shouldn't be that big of a deal, or I should be already over this by now, or I shouldn't be going through what I'm going through. But no, if we can just recognize those emotions without casting judgment, it's really important. And it's this idea of you can't really master or control what you can't acknowledge. So the first one, emotional awareness. The second one, cognitive flexibility. And it's this ability to challenge the unhelpful thoughts and reframe them in a more helpful manner. So here's an example. So instead of embracing after a difficult situation has happened. Maybe things didn't go the way you want them to, or things didn't, the outcomes weren't what you hoped they would be, rather than uh, holding on to a belief of, I'm a failure. Maybe it's something like, I'm learning through this discomfort, or I'm learning as a result of that mistake. That somehow, rather than holding on to the negative, I'm bad, I'm a failure, I'm a screw up, is to be able to hold on to something differently. Like, this is an opportunity for growth. I'm learning. This is actually a part of my journey. In fact, it's just related to that. Often think about it this way. If we can start to frame situations less as obstacles, maybe more as opportunities. That's this idea of reframing and cognitive flexibility. That doesn't mean we ignore the obstacles, but in the midst of those hardships, those challenges, those things that aren't going our way, the things that don't work out the way that we hope they might, or we plan for them to, in the midst of those obstacles, we can see them as opportunities. And in this case, with mental fortitude, many times the opportunities, this is an opportunity to strengthen my mental fortitude. This is an opportunity to increase my resilience. This is an opportunity to strengthen uh, my distress tolerance. Like, what if we were able to step into challenges and difficulties with that kind of mindset? Now, it might not be as easy as this switch from like this, oh no, like, oh no, this happened, to like, oh good, I get to work on something. Like, have you ever had, and this kind of as a joke, like you just don't have time, right? You're like rushing out the door, and you forgot something, you have to run back to the house and get back in the car, and and before you know, you're stuck in traffic and you're stressed, right? And you're worried about where you need to be and why you're not there yet and what do you need to do to get there. And in the midst of that, like, a moment, right, what feels like, oh no, I'm going to be late, and oh no, this isn't working out, and oh no, this wasn't the plan. If you could switch to something like, oh good, I'm working on patience. Oh good, in this moment I'm stuck in traffic, I'm forced to slow down. Like, oh good, I'm gonna have to find a way to see this really difficult situation in a more positive light. I know that might be a stretch, but that's this kind of idea of cognitive flexibility. Okay, the next one, the third one, which is values-based action. So acting in alignment with your core values, not just your mood. So ask yourself this question: what would the version of me I admire to do right now? That's a great question. Right, when there's difficulty, challenge, hardship, stress, strain, what would the version of me I admire to be do right now? I think that's a really great kind of grounding question. Aside from whatever situation's going on, whatever the context is, whatever mood that has shown up in me. All right, like, I'm grumpy, I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm mad, I'm frustrated, I'm whatever it might be. If we can pause, take a deep breath, and reflect for a moment. So, this values based action, like, I want to respond rather than react. React is what happens when our emotions take over, right? And then we just spiral and we're not in control, right? In that moment, our emotions are in control. But when we put ourselves back in control. Say, hey, what's the best version of me? What would they do? What would they do in this situation? And it allows us to slow down, reflect, step back a little bit, see a better perspective, and then lean back in with our values. Okay, so then the last one I'll talk about is what's called self efficacy, and it's building belief in your ability to cope, adapt, and grow. I love that. Building your belief in your ability to cope, adapt, and grow. So fortitude is built every time you keep going, even a little. Okay, so when we can just get to that next little step, that's fortitude. We can push ourselves little by little, step by step. Here's one of the things I love, and I've shared on this uh, live stream before that I was a former athlete. I was a runner for years and loved that. And so in the midst of that, I also coached. I coached soccer for many years. And so as a former athlete, as a former coach, I did a lot of study in the area of endurance, this idea of fortitude, perseverance. Here's one of the studies I remember learning about. So there's a study years ago where they took a group of elite athletes. They were all endurance athletes. So these were like the top of their game, best at what they did, endurance athletes. One of the studies was specifically about runners, marathon runners. And what they studied in all the qualities and all the competencies and all the skills and all the workouts and all the nutrition and like all the training and everything that went in to making them the best of the best, and compared them to those who were close but not quite. It wasn't because their training was better. It wasn't because necessarily and only because the nutrition is better. It wasn't because they had better shoes or they had a better coach or they were sponsored by a better brand. All these other things that we might think contributes to becoming the best of the best. One of the significant factors they found was this exact idea that we're talking about today: mental fortitude. So mental fortitude in the case of these endurance athletes was the fortitude to set their alarm before they went to bed, wake up when the alarm went off without hitting snooze, like oh dark 30 in the morning, get up, get there. They don't want to, right? The obstacle is that I'm tired and it's dark out, or it might be cold out, or whatever it might be, but getting up and getting going, or getting their workout in like before the sun even rose that day or before anybody else was even up around them, right? This pushing through time after time after time and time. And then that translating over time when they were doing their workouts. So with these runners specifically, what made them the best of the best, again, wasn't necessarily just their training, just their nutrition, just their food, just their coach. It was this idea of mental fortitude. They pushed themselves little by little, day after day, time after time, and eventually, what came to this high, uh, like quality, in their competition, was their ability to push just a little bit harder, a little bit faster, a little bit further than the athletes who were right next to them, who were equally qualified, who were equally competent, who had trained, probably used the same nutrition plan, often used the same workout plans. Right. So it wasn't about that they were necessarily physically stronger. It's that they were mentally stronger. This idea of mental fortitude. Okay, so I just want to talk about a couple tools and techniques and kind of make this practical for us. So here's a couple. I'm going to just give you four again. These kind of tools and techniques. The first one is this what we call a CBT tool. CBT comes from what we know in therapy is cognitive behavioral therapy, and it's this. We talked earlier about this idea of reframing when I talked about cognitive flexibility, looking at something that might be negative that we can view it as something positive, seeing something that might be an obstacle but we could understand it as an opportunity. That's all in this idea of reframing. Reframing is a key component of what we know as CBT. So here's how it ties into cognitive behavioral therapy. We're going to use these three C's, the letter C, to start reframing. So when thoughts start to pop into our mind, we're going to do these three things. We're going to first C is catch it. The second C is challenge it. And the third C is change it. So here's what we're going to do. So situation happens, things don't go our way. Maybe the thought is initially, I'm not good enough. Okay, so the first thing, we're just going to catch that thought, right? We're just going to like pay attention. The second is we're going to not just catch it, but we're going to challenge it. We're going to ask ourselves, is that really true? Or is that just like fear talking? Is that anxiety talking? So after we've caught it, right, I'm not good enough, after we've challenged it, is that really true? Or is that just fear talking? Challenge it. And then the third one is change it. This idea of like, I'm going to switch from I'm not good enough to something like, it's okay. I'm still learning. I don't have it all figured out. I haven't perfected this. In fact, I might never perfect it. It's okay. I'm still learning. And you notice that shift? That shift has started from I'm not good enough to this reframe of saying, hey, it's okay. I'm still learning. I'm working on it and I'm getting better. Okay, so this next one comes from an EFT insight. EFT stands for emotionally focused therapy. I'm giving you a lot of acronyms: CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy; EFT, emotionally focused therapy. So here's the insight, and it's this idea that emotions are messengers. So consider this. So when your emotion shows up, let's take the emotion of anger. When anger shows up, ask yourself, like, what what boundaries are being crossed, or what expectation wasn't met. Right? If we can take these emotions and we can turn them into questions, if we can take these emotions and we can apply some logic or some insight, we can actually pair. It's actually really cool. We pair so a part of our brain with another part of our brain. There's a part of our brain that holds our emotions, our creative thinking, and this other part which is more the cognitive problem-solving part of our brain. And we can connect those two. There's great power in it. Again, so when the emotion shows up, ask the questions. So here's maybe another example of that. So like when sadness or grief shows up, think about what loss needs to be processed, needs to be honored in that moment. Earlier when I talked about like just allowing us to feel our feelings without judgment, this is a great example of that. Okay, the next one in this idea of our tools and techniques is what we refer to as mental rehearsal. And it's this idea of visualization. Man, this is used a lot. Actually, I was mentioning earlier as an athlete and a coach, this is used a ton in sports psychology. This is used for high performers in any industry, actually. So, mental rehearsal. So, it's this idea of actually practicing it in your mind before you actually do it. So, this idea of visualization. So, like visualize in your mind, right? Handling stress with calm, with clarity. Right? If we can start to do the work here in our mind, when it comes time to do it, man, it's just so much easier, right? We've already kind of mentally prepared ourselves. And I love actually this idea playing out when every time I watch the Olympics. So like in the Winter Olympics, have you ever seen this? Like you see in the Winter Olympics, you see like the bobcat, the luge, at those who are waiting to go next, or they're kind of like they're somewhere in line. You can actually kind of see them like move their body as if in their mind. This is exactly what they're doing. They're actually practicing the turns like in their mind, right? Like, okay, I'm going to go this way, and then I'm going to go that way, and then, right, go straight away, and I'm going to go this way, and I'm going to go this way, right? They're practicing this idea of mental rehearsal. Or in the Summer Olympics, might be something like the pommel horse. You see somebody like a gymnast, again, waiting to go up next or warming up, and you might see them actually same kind of thing. They're kind of like rotating, right? Right, rotating. Okay, I'm gonna do this, right? And I'm gonna do this. Yeah, and so they're mentally rehearsing. They're visualizing, and that is a key skill that we can apply, that we can strengthen in this idea of mental fortitude. We can actually practice something in our mind before we have to practice it or play it out in real life. Okay, so here's how it works. You visualize yourself in a situation. You take a breath, and then you just see yourself working through it, like in a way again that's calm, that's confident, that's grounded. So when it comes time to actually do that thing, you're already in a better place. Okay, then the last one I'll talk about is this idea of self-compassion. Have compassion. Back to this idea of being able to walk through this without judgment. So you might like just put your hand on your heart. You might just take a moment, take a deep breath, and be able to say, "This is hard, but I'm trying my hardest. I'm giving my best, and that's all I can do." Like compassionate, right, towards ourselves. I'm trying my hardest. I'm doing my best, and that's all that I can do. Okay, so how do we like take this into real life? Okay, so um, just a few talking points here. So every day, mental fortitude looks maybe something like this: uh, showing up to work when you feel anxious, choosing kindness over reactivity, saying no to something or someone in order to protect your peace, and then asking for support, even if you're afraid of appearing weak. Those are great examples. Mental fortitude, day in and day out, right? It's showing up for yourself, showing up for others, choosing to keep pushing through, right? Even if there's anxiety, worry, nervous, stress, choosing to be kind towards yourself and others, right? Even if the tendency is to want to be reactive, setting boundaries, being able to say no to certain people or certain things and circumstances and situations so that you can say yes to yourself, to your peace. And then this idea, reach out, ask for support, lean in on others. And even when it might be the perception of, this makes me look weak or this makes me feel weak. So these things I would encourage you to challenge you. So what's one small strength you can apply today into this week around this idea of mental fortitude? Remember, I said at the very beginning that mental fortitude is not about it's not about uh, like the hovering work of a helicopter parent, right? Where we just swoop in and we rescue so that we don't have to feel the hurt and the pain of whatever happened, or the lawnmower parent who just gets out ahead of everything and mows down every obstacle that ever could be there so we don't experience any of it. But no, no, no. Mental fortitude is allowing ourselves to show up in the good times and in the hard times, when things are easy and when things are difficult. It's our ability to be able to say, hey, somehow in the midst of what's difficult and challenging, I am able to see this as something that could be positive. In the midst of the obstacle, I'm going to look for an opportunity. I'm going to take a deep breath. Then I'm going to practice the things that we talked about, right? These CBT skills, EFT skills, mental rehearsal, self compassion, right? I'm going to show up for myself. I'm going to choose kindness. I'm going to set some boundaries and I'm going to reach out and ask for help. Here's the great part about mental fortitude is it's a work that is one step at a time. It's a little by little. And when we can choose every situation, every time, every day, it gives us the opportunity to grow, to strengthen in our fortitude. Okay, it's great to be with you guys today. Hope this was helpful for you. I'd love to hear how this plays out for you this week as you can take these small steps in the difficulty of today, tomorrow, the next day, right? That you make this conscious choice to be able to see this as an opportunity and you're going to lean in and you're going to use the tools that we talked about today. Hope you guys have an incredible week. Dr. Mike will be with us on Wednesday for Wellness Wednesday. I'll be back for Faithful Friday. Have a great week, everyone.